Welcome to NIOS live classes. Subject: Indian Sign Language, Secondary Level. Code number 230. Module number 1, Understanding Indian Sign Language. Lesson number 1, Indian Sign Language as a complete language. Introduction. First, sign language depends wherever there were deaf people, just as spoken language developed wherever there were hearing people. Research has shown that spoken language sign languages are also true, complete, alive and active language. For example, like spoken language has their own grammar structure, same for the sign language. Next, like spoken languages, sign languages are also not universal. For example, China has their own sign language, India has their own sign language. Just like spoken languages is differ from place to place, similar is sign language, they also differ from deaf to deaf and place to place. Outcomes. After study this lesson, learner will know about some points. At first, they will able to describe Indian Sign Language as a real and complete language. Second, they can explain the building blocks of spoken or written language and sign language. And third is, they can describe common misconceptions about sign language. First, we will look how language is structured. Indian Sign Language is a full and complete language that can express concepts as fully and with as much complexity as English, Hindi or any other spoken or written language. Indian Sign Language fits the definition of a language because it contains all the elements of a language. Sign language were first recognized as real and complete human language in the 1960s. Through research done in the USA and the Netherlands, human language has a different structure than animal communication. it can be any sign or spoken languages, is always different from animal communication. Two things make human language different. First is meaning of words and signs, and second is structure of words and sentences. First we will look the meaning of words and signs. In a human language, words and signs have meaning because all the people of this community use them in the same way. We learn from each other what words and signs means. In other sign languages, expressing the same meaning easy looks completely different. For example, the sign of easy in India is through our nose, but it varies from place to place. But a place in Turkish, their sign of easy is near our eyes, and in British like this, and for America it's also differ. When animals such as dolphins or bees communicate through voice cells and also through their movements, this communication is fixed. They don't use creativity or science or anything, they just use their voice calls and their movements. For some signs, there is a connection between form of the sign and its meaning. Or we can say the sign form and the meaning is relative. For example, in India, sign for woman is refers to a woman's nose ring. However, people still need to learn the sign. People from other cultures where women do not wear nose rings will not recognize any connection between the sign and the meaning. So they can have their own sign for the same meaning. For example, after learning ISL and went to a south, so the sign should be vary because there is a variation in ISL. For other signs such as easy, there is no clear connection between the form and the meaning of the sign easy. The meaning of signs or words can change over time to time. And also new meanings can be added. Meaning is linked to the culture of each human community. For example, the sign of easy, impossible, fast, difficult, and also an impossible. But sometimes as we study, the form of sign and meaning is not related. B. The structure of words and sentences. In all human languages, words and sentences are made from smaller elements. The language is put together by assembling elements at different levels. At the smallest level, which is called phonology, it means we find parts of signs that have no meaning on their own. For example, we take the example of women. During the sign of woman, we use and extend index finger and put it on our nose. So then it makes the sign at the side of the nose, so it makes the sign of the women. This is the sign of woman. At the next level, called morphology, signs or parts of signs can be combined together. For example, we can closely join the signs women and Mary, and together this means the sign for wife. As we learn how we make the sign for wife, same as for the son. First, we have to sign the man and second is born. So we get the sign for son. Let's take a short break. welcome back to our classes. We have read two topics, which is morphology and phonology. Now we will study what is syntax. The most important point about language structure is that we can combine words into longer sentences. This is called syntax. When we make sentence, there are rules how we have to arrange the words or signs. For example, when signing a question in Indian Sign Language, general question what has to be placed at the end of the sentence, not at the beginning or in the middle, because it has rule. For example, in English, you can see there is a question, what are you doing? So, English sentence follows the English rule, same as for ISL, but in ISL, you can see there is a different sentence but same meaning, which follows the ISL rules. We can make an unlimited number of sentences because signs can be combined in many different ways to make sentences. And these only human can do this. Animal communication is limited and does not have rules to create sentences from words. How language is used? Because human language is limitless, we can do for more with it than any other animal. You can see there is a flow chart which starts from use of language. It distributes into three parts. First is talking about different time and places. Second, creating new words. And third, social function of sign language. First use of language was talking about different times and places. We can talk about what we did last week or make plans for the next 20 years. We can also talk about places and objects that are not here at the moment. We can talk about houses, mountains, parks, trees, etc. In fact, we can talk about completely imaginary places. In human language, we can say things like, if you see snake, you first have to stand still and make no sound. When the snake has moved away enough, you then run to the house or tell me. In many animals, for example, birds and monkeys have voice calls to warn each other about dangerous enemies such as snakes. Animals don't use words to communicate, so they warn through each other through their voice calls. However, this can only be used for the hare, and now like calling out snake, when the snake is seen nearby, animal cannot say more complicated things that are beyond the here and now. Second use of language is creating new words. Language must have creative expression and the capacity to expand as technology and environments change. Sign language are no different from spoken languages, and new signs are invented all the time. For example, we have sign for Wi-Fi, for computer, and also for WhatsApp. These signs were not always a part of Indian Sign Language, but have been added as these things become a part of daily life. So these signs make through the meaning of the word and the work that thing do. For example, Wi-Fi, computer and WhatsApp. So their form of sign is related to their logo or their meaning. Third use of language was social functions of language. You may think that language is mainly considered as a medium through which one person can give information to other person. However, there is so much more that we can do with the language. Using language, humans can make promises, but animals cannot make promises. Also, we can tell lies and give misinformation, because in human language you can talk about what is real and what is not real. We can make excuses and tell stories and tell lie, but in animals it's all not applicable because they don't use words or sentences to communicate. We can also make jokes, and a person from the same language and culture will usually understand our joke. But in animal, they don't usually make jokes or laugh at each other's The aim is not to give information but to manage our relationship with each others. We can use language to talk about the language itself. This is what we have been doing in this lesson. We are using ISL to talk about ISL and other languages. We have signs to talk about ideas such as words, sentences, meanings and handshapes, and so we can describe what sign language are. Now we will look what is wrong beliefs about Indian Sign Language, or we can say misconception about ISL. At first we will look the first misconception about ISL is many people have misconcept about sign language. They think sign language is just a gesture. The most common misconception is that sign language are not complete languages. That they are similar to the gesturing or miming using by hearing people and have limited ability to express ideas. We have already explained in detail that this is wrong. There is a flow chart which is showing wrong beliefs about Indian Sign Language. People think sign language is same all over the world. They also think that ISL is not as good as other sign languages. They think sign language has been invented by hearing people to help deaf people. And last but not least, sign language is dependent on spoken languages. First misconception about sign language, that sign language is small, same all over the world, is wrong. That misconception was wrong because each country or region has its own sign language and its own vocabulary and their grammar. Deaf people from different countries cannot easily understand each other's sign language. For example, after learning ISL, we went to Japan, so we can't understand their sign language. Let's take a short break. Welcome back to our classes. Now we will forward our topic. If a hearing person learns sign language in one country, the person cannot easily understand a sign language from other country because they have different sign language, same as for spoken language. But they have to learn the other sign language separately to understand their language. Even within one country, sign language often varies from region to region. Some countries have more than one sign language used within their territory. For example, in India we have ISL in most parts of the country, but ASL is also being used in Bangalore, and Alipur sign language is used in a village with many deaf people in Karnataka. Also, some sign languages are used in more than one country. For example, American Sign Language is not only used in USA but also in a large part of Canada. Second misconception is some people believe that sign language is depend on spoken language. It is a representation of spoken language on the hand. But this is a misconception because each sign language in each country or region has its own structure. This structure differs significantly from the structure of the spoken language used in same country. Sign language is not dependent on spoken language in any way. Indian Sign Language is not at all similar to Hindi or English or to any other spoken language in India. It has its own structure and is not the hand representation of any spoken language. We do use finger spelling in ISL, but only to quote words from the written language and occasion. Finger spelling is only a small part of sign language, and it does not mean that ISL is based on another spoken or written language. ISL has its own identity that is independent from any other language in India. Some people believe that sign language has been invented by hearing people to help deaf people. But this is wrong, because sign language have evolved naturally in all places where deaf people have been gathered. Nobody has invented them for deaf people. Deaf people themselves have created sign languages. We do not know how much about the history of Indian Sign Language because there was no video recording when it started, but we do know what it is, the invention of deaf people themselves. Some people also believes that Indian Sign Language is not as good as other sign languages. But this conception is also wrong because sign language, any sign language is superior to each other as deaf people can communication and express themselves in any sign language. So there is no sign language is superior to any other. Many people including deaf people believes that Western Sign Language, especially American Sign Language, have more or better grammar and are more developed than ISL. This is also wrong. As Indian Sign Language expands to new professional context, its professional vocabulary also grows. The same process has happened in other sign languages. It is an automatic and natural process. Now we had completed our lesson. So now for better understanding, we will do some exercise. Question 1. How can human language be used for different purposes? And the answer is yes, human languages can be used to talk about different times and different places for communication for self or social functions. Second, can we talk about different time and places in any languages? And the answer is yes, we can talk about different times and places in any language, be it sign language or spoken language. Third, what are the smallest element of human language? And the smallest elements of human language is phonology. Next, the smallest level of language is phonology. Does it apply in sign language? No, as many smallest parts of signs have no meaning on their own. Next, at morphology level, signs or part of ISL can be combined together, does it form meaningful words? Yes. At morphology level, signs or part of ISL can be combined together. It forms meaningful words like woman plus marry, we get the sign for wife. Thank you.